And we are officially live. Welcome everyone to our live chat today. I'm super excited to introduce you guys to the lovely Ivy Rose who's with us.
Thank you.
She's the author of The Old River Road, as well as the second book, which I don't remember.
Called Left to Die.
Left to Die, yes, a very dramatic title. But we're super excited to have her to talk about her books, to just discuss all things writing and bookish fun stuff, and hopefully answer some of your questions if you guys want to join in today. We're not really sure how many of you will be joining us since it is kind of in the middle of the afternoon, but that's why we record so that you guys can watch later, which will be really fun.
Yeah.
So Ivy, I'm going to go ahead and have you just introduce yourself a little bit, just like your name and age and what initially got you into writing. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and post our link over on Goodreads just to let people know that we're live over there. So if you just want to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So I am Ivy Rose. I am 19 years old. And when I started writing, it wasn't really anything dramatic or exciting to tell, unfortunately. I wish. It was pretty slow. I always have enjoyed keeping a journal, and that started when my family would go on vacations. I would want to remember. So I would just journal as we were on our trip, wherever that was. And so that kind of turned into, well, I wonder if I could turn some of these into stories, like actual books. I was probably 6 or 7 at this time. And of course, my parents were like, yeah, of course you can, go for it. They're always my biggest fans. So that's been fun. And
yeah.
So that kind of morphed into, well, I guess I don't have to have it based completely off my family. I guess I could actually make it up. So over about 5 or 6 years, I started venturing into fiction, and I haven't left. So
that's so cool.
About it.
Yeah, and I love that you're so young too, because I know that a lot of people that watch these videos are young themselves. So it's just cool to have you know, being a younger person and having already accomplished so much. So I'm going to go ahead and look at our little chat box and see if we have anyone joining us so far. It looks like we have one person with us today.
That's awesome.
So welcome to the one who is watching. We're so excited to have you. So if you have any questions, we would love to answer your questions, because of course we can just sit here and talk to each other, but it's always so much more fun to hear from you guys. So if you have any questions at all, just feel free to ask. We would love to answer them. So Ivy, let's go ahead and talk about your first book, which I think is really, really fascinating, because you actually wrote it kind of based off of your grandparents and their story, right? Or was it your great-grandparents?
It's my double great-grandparents, so it's a little ways up the line. But it's kind of funny because my grandpa is the child of the youngest of their kids, so it's not really as far back as it seems. It's just because my grandpa was on the end of the children. It seems like we're the youngest of anyone else in the family, so it's not a problem. But it's double great-grandparents, and not as far back as people seem to think, but it's awesome. So so that one, it was funny when it started. I knew that my great-great-grandparents had a pretty neat pioneer story. And since I've always been attracted to Little House on the Prairie or Caddy Woodlawn type books, neatest thing ever. And so I was helping my grandma clean out her basement, I think it was, and I came across this box of just random documents and pictures and whatnot. And right on the top was Clara's memoirs. And I knew that Clara was my great-great-grandmother, who is the one who came out to Washington from Chicago. So, this is interesting. So I read it, and it was written by her. I think it was in 1937 she wrote it. And she was just recalling her memories of their first couple of years in Washington. And I was fascinated. It sounded like the most amazing fiction book that could possibly have been written. I mean, it was 10 pages long, but I'm imagining oh my gosh, this would make a fantastic story. And then I thought, man, I hope somebody would actually write a book about this someday. This would be so. About 7 years later, my mom was like, why don't you write the book? Like, well, I don't want to. I want someone else to write it so I can read it. But she encouraged me to take those memoirs and all the other historical documents we had from William and Clara and
Wow.
actually write their story. So that's how that came
That's
about.
amazing. I totally love that, because it's especially interesting for me because recently I've been doing like a little bit more research on my own family history.
Yeah.
And we found some of my grandma's like old papers just explaining who was related to who and who came from what countries.
Wow.
And it's so interesting. So I love that you took that and created a story out of it. Like you preserved their legacy. And not only that, it's like you're also offering it for other people to read as a fascinating fiction story. So I think that's really cool. So is that like part of a series, or is it just a standalone?
It is. It was initially going to be a standalone. And then my mom is a big backer to this whole element of my writing. She's like, well, you could write a story about this and about that. And she has about as many ideas as I do. And so I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We need someone to tone us down here. And so, but her thought was, well, you could write a couple of books about each generation. I thought, well, that would be really cool. And so the problem, I guess I would say, is that as much as I love that book, it is not my favorite thing to work on. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly it's because it takes so much effort to go through and find and make sure it's as accurate as possible and yet still make it mine. Right. And it's horrifying and terrifying because I'm like, well, what if somebody knew them, and what if I'm totally putting them in the wrong, it's totally wrong. Yeah. And I think that's the perfectionist part of me coming out. But so as of now, the idea is to write 2 books on each generation. Okay. So I don't know how long that will take because it's not my top priority. But I do enjoy looking into the history of it. I think the last one, I kind of burned myself out because I wrote it for Nano and I had done no research prior to Nano. And so it was my first Nano. I was super sick at the time, and it was just a bad situation all around. Yeah. But I think if I prepare myself a little bit better and actually do my research, then it will be a little bit easier and a lot more enjoyable. It won't be so stressful because that book went from first draft to published in 9 months, and that was a little too much. Yeah, so I will slow down next time.
That's very cool. I love hearing about, because that was your first actually, published work. So that's really cool. So Irvin PB is here, and she says, hi, Ivy and Libby. She is from Goodreads. I recognize her. She said, genealogy is very fun and a great story fodder. I've been researching mine myself. That's really awesome.
Oh, very cool. Good for you. Cool.
So just a reminder for everyone joining in, if you guys want to ask us any questions, if you have questions for Ivy or myself, it can be about books or really anything at all. Please feel free to ask, because it is so much more fun when we get to answer your questions. And so we would love to hear from you guys. So feel free to talk it up in the chat box. So, all right. So since you said that's not really your top priority story, there are other things that you're working on, other things you're excited about. Let's talk about maybe some of the more exciting stuff. Well, we'll go ahead and move on to your second book, which is It Left to Die. And as I said, that's a very dramatic title. So what is that story about?
So that story is also inspired by true events, but that story, it happened in my lifetime. And my little sister, we adopted from China when she was 2 years old, and I got to go to China to get her. Oh, wow. And that was 10 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it was a really neat experience, and I was only 9 when we went, so I have memories, but I was kind of able to push away the things I didn't want to remember, because there's a lot of really horrible things that go on, especially in orphanages. Yeah. And we got to visit my sister's orphanage. Wow. And that was really hard. And my sister is or was, however you want to say, considered a special needs baby because she has a congenital heart defect. Okay. And we are lucky that she is alive today. She ended up having to have her heart surgery in China. Wow. And as an amazing miracle, she happened to be in the capital of China where her now cardiologist from our area had gone 3 years prior and taught all of the doctors how to perform this particular surgery. Oh, so they did her surgery in the most perfect way it could have been done. Most heart surgeries coming out of China are not well done. They have to be redone as soon as the child gets to the US.
Oh, wow.
And that didn't happen. And so there's this miracle surrounding my little sister.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was really cool. And so even now, orphans are something that I am very passionate about. I have 4 adopted siblings.
Oh,
and
that's so awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. And so I feel like, I mean, we can only take in so many children. And as horrible as that sounds, it's like, yeah, well, you know, we have 4, and most people would think, oh my gosh, that's so many. But at the same time, it's like more and more, you know, they all need homes. And so how can you pick and choose? And, you know, at my age, there's very little I can do. I mean, I can't adopt them, unfortunately, right now, or I would. And with my health the way it is, I can't travel to the countries and serve them there. And so I really wanted to do something to raise awareness and tell people what a big issue this is. And not just in other countries, but also in the US, because 3 of my siblings are adopted from foster care. So we have the international experience and the domestic experience as well. So it's kind of a unique twist there. And so with Left to Die, I really wanted to raise awareness, but I wasn't sure how. And this story, it's kind of one that I've always wanted to write since I was very little, but I just didn't know the setting. And the idea was someone finding an abandoned baby. That was about as far as the idea went. And then I realized, well, that actually fits really well in China about 15 years ago.
Right.
And so that's when the story is placed. I don't really say a year particularly, but about 15 years ago is when I imagine it to be. And the story is about an abandoned baby with health issues, health concerns, but hers are visible. It's not a heart defect like my sister was. Multiple other issues that would lead her biological parents to not want her. And there is, I could talk about China forever, but most of the issue is they're just such a lost people and they don't understand so much, and it's absolutely tragic. And so most of these children are seen as bad luck if they're not perfect, which my sister was, because 1, she's a girl, 2, she has a heart defect, which made her turn purple and blue on occasion. And she's also left-handed, which is something that also makes them unlucky. So it's just horrible and so sad and tragic. But I wanted to show how horrible this can be, but then also the hope that is there and that can be there when Christ is brought in. And so Left to Die, that's very, very long. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk forever.
That's awesome. I love it.
So Left to Die is about a Chinese missionary family who's there, and my main character, Lindy, she's a nurse in a mission hospital there, and she finds an abandoned baby. And it's kind of her journey to this is not what she wanted in life, and yet she can't seem to stop thinking about this baby. She doesn't know what to do with it. You know, she doesn't want to put it in an orphanage, so she tries to find other options. And I think the ending is very sweet. And I've talked to several Chinese missionaries that I know personally, and many of them have said that they were either able to adopt a child they found or something along those lines. So it's a very realistic story. Which I think is kind of cool. It's not really how I planned it, but it is very realistic. So that's, it's sad, but one of my things that I'm really careful about is making sure I can touch sensitive issues with respect and dignity. And so I feel like there is a way to do that. And that's how I wanted this to be, is show how lost the Chinese people are, and yet what Christ can do. And so that's kind of a very long explanation of how Left to Die came about.
That's amazing though, because I just love, that truly is an example of how fiction can have such a big impact and change lives. And I mean, that's just, it sounds like, I haven't read your books yet, but I'm very excited to. But it just sounds like, the Lord's really given you a gift to be able to touch these topics, like you said, with class and in a respectful way, and still have it be very powerful, which I think is incredible. And we also talked a little bit about another project, which we're not going to talk about yet because it's a secret, but I'm very excited for your future projects and just the things that the Lord is doing through you. And it's just really awesome to see. So I'm going to check our little chat box and see if you guys have questions. If you guys have questions, please feel free to let us know, because otherwise we're just going to talk about whatever. And if there's something like specifically to the writing process that you guys are interested in learning about or talking about, please feel free to ask, or publishing too. Okay. So Irvin D says, hey, I'm left-handed. Give your sister a left-handed high five for me.
I will do that.
That's so great. When I was younger, I always like wished that I was left-handed just because I thought it would be cool.
Me too. It is cool.
I know. So yeah, it's amazing how those little differences that everyone has that the Lord gives us are like so special. And so it's really sad to think of a culture that, you know, would look down upon those things. And so that's really, really awesome that you touch that in your books. So, all right, there are so many different things we could talk about. It's like, I don't even know where to begin as far as like writing process, character, publishing. I mean, there's really so many things. So maybe the first question I should ask you is, what is your favorite thing just about the writing process in general? Is it like your brainstorming, initial ideas, or is it when you finally get it done? Is it the publishing, going to writers' conferences? Like, what is your favorite thing about the whole writing process?
Wow, that's a big question.
I know.
Well, for like actually writing and drafting, I think it would be a toss-up between the initial idea and actually getting to write it. And I would say probably getting to write it, because my initial ideas usually come years before I start writing a book. Okay. And so, because I have to mull over it for a very long time. It's very exciting when I finally get to start working on something. And then just in general, I think I would say getting to meet so many people and make so many amazing connections. Yeah. And that is just, I'm very much a people person, and I can talk a blue streak, and I love people. And so that has been the most amazing thing that I never even expected. I don't know what I thought it would be like, but I didn't think I would get to meet so many incredible people.
Yeah, and that's so cool, because I think oftentimes people think of writing as a very introverted activity, and it is. Like, you spend a lot of time with yourself, but at the same time, it's really all about people. It's all about sharing your stories with people and hearing other people's stories and connecting with them. And I have yet to go to any writers' conferences, which I'm super excited about going to someday, but it is a very social profession, I guess you could say, because it's all about people, really, which I think is so much fun, because you spend time by yourself working on your story, but you're doing it with other people in mind. So once you get your story to other people and can talk to them or talk to them about their projects, it is literally the funnest thing ever. Like, it's such a blast.
Well, and I think, you have to know how to relate to a lot of people while you're writing even. And so for me, it's like, yes, even though I have my nose buried in my computer screen, I'm thinking, how would this person I know react in this kind of situation? Because I can't get stuck in my own brain and how I would react, because there's so many people in this world who are not like me. Most people are not like me. And so it's been very interesting. And I find that writing introverted characters is so hard for me.
Really?
I have a lot of introverted friends who help me with that. So that's very nice. But it's the same thing. You just have to learn how to relate to a lot of people. And that has been quite the challenge, and I have enjoyed it. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would say, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, technically, I'm 50% introverted and 50% extroverted. But when it comes to writing, I really enjoy writing introverted characters. But the hardest part for me is like making them not grumpy, because a lot of times introverts can come across as, either being rude or whatever. And so that's kind of something I have to work on a little bit, is make sure that not everybody is going to relate with like how an introvert thinks. So you don't want them to just be rude all the time, but it's for people who are introverts, like, they understand the struggle of having to talk to someone.
Yeah. So, which is so funny, because that's not something that I understand at all. I'm like, talk to everybody. I don't see the problem here. So that has definitely been a challenge. And some of my friends are like, it's sometimes hard to talk to people. I'm like, It is? Okay, well, let's see here. So that's just funny me quirk, but anyway.
Yeah. So how about those of you who are watching? Are you guys introverted, extroverted, 50-50? We'd love to know like what you guys are. We've got some more people talking here. Medfamo Awasu, I probably totally butchered your name. I'm so sorry. She said, hi, I'm also left-handed. Madison Clark says she's also left-handed.
Wow, there's a lot of lefties. That's awesome.
I love it. It's great. So what about your plot? And I think this is interesting because we talked about this before, and I've kind of talked about this with everyone who's been on the channel about their process or their lack thereof for a process. Because the last girl that we did a chat with, she was talking about how she loved boundaries. Like she loved giving herself all these parameters and writing within them. And I have kind of a different perspective on that. I don't necessarily like the boundaries. So what about you? Do you like to plot things out ahead of time or just kind of fly by the seat of your pants? Like what's your writing style like?
So it used to be completely by the seat of my pants, and it got to the I enjoyed that just because that's kind of just who I am as a person. And so it fit. But the issue is that I would hit a roadblock and I would have no place to go, and that got really frustrating. And so I had a lot of unfinished projects. And so I don't remember who it was.
The struggle of every author.
Yeah. So I don't know who it was who told me, you might want to try giving outlining a try. I'm like, no. So like that's gonna take all the fun out of it. But I did a little bit. I would make what I call a skeleton outline. So instead of keeping it all in my head, I would just say, okay, I want this scene here. I want this scene here. And it's not even scenes. It's more like events. Like this needs here and for this to work way over here. Right. And so I just do it in a notebook and sometimes even on sticky notes so that I can move stuff around.
Oh, nice.
That just helps me. If I hit a roadblock, I can either just leave it and move to the next event, or I can just force myself to write through and get to the next event faster. Right. So that's how I used to outline. And I still do it like that, kind of. I've tried a lot of different methods and it just doesn't work. I don't think that much about my stories before I write them. And so the one that I have found that works really well for me is called the snowflake method by Randy something or other. I don't know the last name. Excuse me. Anyway, that one has been helpful because he lays out, I think it's like 17 options for outlining. And the idea is you start here, you build, and it's like a snowflake. So you start with a stick figure and then you start adding the little bumps and all the little details. That's too many details for me. I can't do that. And so what I've kind of done with the snowflake method is I take the parts out that are helpful to me. And so I do this and I do that and then I call it good. So it's kind of, it takes away a lot of the guessing and the questions that come up while I'm writing. Like, what was their hair color again? I totally forgot. But it doesn't have like this little nuances. Like, I don't know. I can't even think of them because I don't even put them in my books. And so that has been most helpful, I think, because I get to know the character a little bit more before I start writing. Right. Which I learned is a good thing. I didn't do that before and that was bad. So that's been helpful. I think overall it's just helped me have some cleaner drafts, but it's not extensive outlining. I don't let myself spend more than just a couple days working on an outline. Yeah. And most of the time I'm drafting while I'm outlining because anything else yes, there's big stuff that needs to be fixed. But if I have my outline and then my skeleton outline with events, I'm usually pretty well set. And then anything else, as long as the plot works, which usually it does, sometimes not, but as long as that works, then anything else I can go back and fix. And that's kind of the mindset I try to have is this is not permanent. I can fix it later. And that really helps my perfectionistic side.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. I'm sure it helps because I have those same perfectionistic tendencies. And so I think that's good. I definitely relate with everything that you're saying. I'm very much the same way. I might take a couple methods or ideas, and like you said, just pull out what you like about them, but then throw everything else away. Because personally, I love the excitement that comes just a little bit of not knowing. You're totally invested in this story, and there's a little bit of uncertainty of like, okay, how is this? I know how it's pretty much going to turn out, but how are they actually going to get there? Like, I kind of enjoy the mystery of it. And I mean, maybe that's immature writing, maybe it's not. I don't really know. But for now, like where I'm at with writing, that's what I enjoy. And I think often, like, we have to just remember that enjoying ourselves with writing is so much, like, that's the whole point of it, you know. It's very important, and it's so easy to get distracted with those perfectionistic tendencies and those different methods and things. And there's nothing wrong with trying methods and outlining. If that works for you, go for it, people. Like, do it 100%. Yeah. But I think, like, it's hard not to put yourself in a box. Like, you just have to remember that God created you to be you. And there's a certain way that you're going to write, and a certain way that you're going to express your stories. And even though you can learn from other people, you don't feel like you have to copycat them. Don't feel like you have to do things a certain way. So at least that's something that I've learned through the process this past couple years or whatever. So
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. So what about you guys who are watching? If we have any writers out there, do you guys enjoy outlining ahead of time, or just kind of going with the flow, or are you a mixture of both? Okay. So Metafo, I know I'm saying your name wrong, says she's an extrovert. Irvin DB says, I'm extremely extroverted, but I'm getting better at interacting with people because of working with kids in Sunday school. That's awesome. The Chocolate Factory Hunter says, how long is the book going to be, and do you intend to publish it? So I'm not sure which story you were talking about, but maybe talking about the one that you've already mentioned, because both of the books that Ivy has talked about on the chat so far, she has already published. So where can people find those books if they're interested in checking them out?
Yeah, they're both on Amazon, and I'm trying to get them on Barnes & Noble shortly, but Amazon for now, and they're paperback and Kindle. So
okay, very cool. And your author name is just Ivy Rose.
Yeah, so and you can find me as Ivy Rose anywhere on the internet. So
okay, very cool. So yes, her books are already published. If you guys are interested in checking them out, which I'm very excited to check them out. So they're really, really good. So let's see, what else do we want to talk about today? I did want to talk a little bit about like the publishing journey and how you decided to publish your books. What kind of, you started writing your first book. Were you thinking about publishing before that, or how did that come about for you? And then like what trail did you take? Because there are a lot of different roads that lead to publishing and different kinds of publishing. So if you want to share a little bit about your journey with that, that would be awesome.
Sure. So I started writing a dystopia before it was cool, when I was 12. And I'm like, dang it, I should have published that earlier, because nobody was writing it when I started, but now it's so common. It's like, well, that stinks. But anyway, I wrote a dystopia before it was cool. And
just for the record, everybody, in case anybody wants to know.
Thank you. So that was the book I really wanted to get published, because I loved it, and I still love it, and I'm eventually going to rewrite it someday.
Cool.
So that one is pretty awesome. And I guess I was probably around 13 when I really started researching, okay, how can I publish this? Because I was like, I don't really want to do the traditional publishing route, because that sounds so scary. And I was like, no one's going to want me. I'm 13. This isn't going to work. And so I started looking into self-publishing. And there are so many options within the self-publishing world, which I did not realize. And so I did a lot of research, probably way too much, but I got my answers.
That's okay. Now you can share with the rest of us. So
yes. So inside of well, I kind of use the terms interchangeably, but not everybody does, and it's probably not right. So don't listen to me. But inside of self-publishing, there is self-publishing and there is indie publishing. I use the two interchangeably because, first of all, indie publishing sounds a lot less derogatory than self-publishing.
And it sounds cooler too. If it's
it
indie,
sounds a lot
like,
cooler.
oh yeah, cool.
And so apparently indie publishing is considered when you use a indie publishing house, such as Zulon Press. I can't think of the others. Zulon is the only one that comes to mind.
Yeah, there's a few out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are where you submit your book. They always accept it because why are they not? You're giving them money. Yeah. And they charge a lot of money to publish your book. And it's it's more like a hybrid between traditional publishing and self-publishing. However, most of the books coming out of places like Zulon are not super well done, mostly because you're giving them so much money to produce your book. They don't really care, which is so sad and horrible, but it's true. And so there's a lot of like grammar, and I mean, they hardly do any editing. No one like content checks it to make sure that it's actually good or anything like that. So it's really sad, and I feel like that has given self-publishing a bad rap. Now, that's not always the case. I have read a couple of good books coming out of places like that. But for me, first of all, I couldn't afford $5,000 to have them publish my book. And so I'm like, there has to be another option.
All the copies that you have to buy personally.
Exactly. And so I started looking into other options, and I found out about Rebecca Morris, and she has written a ton of books, and I really enjoyed her books. So I emailed her and I said, hey, I really couldn't tell, but I was like, I think your books are self-published, right? Because she would mention it occasionally, and she said they were. And so I just asked her how she did it. And she is the one who has the wealth of information that set me on the track I'm on now.
Okay.
Especially if you have younger siblings, I highly recommend her books. They're very sweet and adorable and very much family friendly. So she's at RebeccaMorris.com, readanotherpage.com, I think it is. But anyway, she's amazing. She's the one who told me about CreateSpace. And I'd heard about Lulu before, but I was not impressed. And that was probably just because the ones I'd seen come out of Lulu. I'm very judgmental about these things, if you can't tell. So the ones that I had seen come out of Lulu were not great. And yes, there were good ones too, but of course the things that stick in my mind are the bad ones. And so I was like, well, I just wasn't impressed with the quality. The binding started falling apart. So I really wanted another option.
Yeah.
And I knew I liked how Rebecca's books looked. And so as she's telling me about this, it made so much sense how CreateSpace worked. And it was very straightforward. But the only thing is that everything had to be formatted and done before you sent it in. And that was where I got lost. I didn't know how to do any of that. Excuse me. And so, but she helped me through that. She's like, well, you just either do it yourself or you hire somebody. And so when I got to that point with River Road, I did hire somebody. And that alone was so much less than having a massive publishing house do it. And so, yes, it's expensive, but it's very worth it. Yes. And so I did end up going with CreateSpace for the print books, and I have been quite impressed with how it turned out. And how it's held up too. I mean, I'm not always gentle with books. I try to be, but yeah. So I've been impressed with how it's held up. And then for the print or the ebook, I also had the person who formatted the paperback do that as well. And so it wasn't hard, but there was no information available online that I could comprehend. And so that was really helpful to have Rebecca walk me through it all.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I don't have any desire to do anything differently. The only thing I've thought about is maybe doing a hardback version of the series that would be through Lulu. But I like CreateSpace. I've been very impressed with how they work. I've gotten a couple of really like bad books from them, and the covers are all cattywampus, and I'm like, what happened? So I just told them, and they sent me new books to replace the broken ones. And so broken books can't be broken. Anyway, so I have just been incredibly impressed with quality and customer service and everything from CreateSpace. So I know that some people, I mean, there's always going to be people who don't like different things, but some people don't like CreateSpace, and that's fine. I mean, it honestly doesn't matter what you use, but CreateSpace has been a fantastic option for me, and I always encourage people to give it a try. So
right, yeah, and I definitely second everything that you've shared because I use CreateSpace as well, and had like a really good experience with it. So it's been wonderful. All of my books so far have been published through CreateSpace, and
very cool.
So I definitely recommend that to people as well. So if you're interested, you guys should totally check it out. Okay, so let's see if you guys have been talking here. Let me catch up with your comments. See, okay.
Everyone has their own conversation in the comment box.
Yeah. The Chocolate Factory Hunter, that's such a fun name, by the way.
That is awesome.
Says, I write in Microsoft Word. I write particular scenes and then patch them up. I'm kind of impatient. I might end up grouping pictures with narration and presenting it to Amazon Studio. That's interesting. I'm not really sure what Amazon Studio is. I guess I've never heard of that necessarily. CreateSpace is a service through Amazon, but I'm not sure if Amazon Studio is something different. I've never actually heard of that.
Heard of it either.
I do know that if you want to look into actually having pictures like in your book, it's a little bit more complicated and also a little bit more expensive. Like if it's going to be colored pictures, black and white, I think is the same price, but you'd probably want to have somebody like help format with that because it gets a little more complicated when for sure and stuff. But that's really cool. That's exciting. So very wonderful, you guys. So again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. We would love to hear what you guys have to say. One of you say, I love writing. I use Beamkey, a story outlining software, which is really good as you get to choose how you can do it. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. I know there are some really good like actual software programs out there that you can get to help you organize everything. And so that's really awesome because I'm not that organized. I just have notebooks. That's all we do here.
Yeah, I tried one of those programs one time and I was like, it's too much. I can't do this. So I'm just back in my Word document and I'm quite happy there. So
yeah, with all the side notes and everything.
Yeah,
that's great.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay, so let me see what else you guys are saying. Okay, so again, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm trying to think of the other questions that I had for you. Let's see, we talked about outline. We talked a little bit about plot. I guess let's talk about encouragement because I think honestly the hardest part of writing a book is finishing it, you know, just pushing through those days where you're like, this is absolutely awful. And you know what? I want to turn this into a two-part question because another part that I get asked a lot from other writers or aspiring authors is how do you find time to write? So maybe the first part of this question is how do you personally find time to write and like what time of day or how do you schedule it? And then secondly, encouragement for those days when you're just you can't go on any longer. You don't think you can.
Yeah. So let's see, which part do you want me to answer first? How I find time?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I have heard a lot of different strategies for finding time. And because that's something that I struggle with just with anything, whether it be school or music practice. I mean, I have a lot of interests that I want to spend time on and not enough time to do it all. So, I mean, I do have, so I do have to prioritize somewhat. And so I guess it does help when I'm like actually working on a certain book and I kind of have a self-made deadline because I know that, okay, these other things need to be pushed away for this certain block of time, whether it be 6 months or 3 months or whatever. This time it's been about 4 months that I've been working really hard on this book, and I have had to put some other things away, which is hard because I feel like I'm a failure in those other things. And so that's kind of a mental battle that I have with myself every day.
Yeah.
However, it does help because now that I took music lessons for 13 years. And so that was practicing for an hour or more every day. And it didn't seem like it took up that much time. But as I started getting older, I'm like, that actually is quite a chunk of time out of my day. And I wouldn't have wanted to spend it doing anything else. But I had to realize, okay, I'm not going to be a professional musician. I need to scale back a little bit.
Right.
And so there are a couple of other things like that. So I guess the first thing is align your priorities. And if writing isn't a priority, that's not a bad thing. If it's very much, there's nothing wrong with that. It just, first of all, don't feel guilty for not writing. Just like I've had to force myself to not feel guilty for not picking up my instrument every day.
Right.
It's very much the same thing. It's just writing is my priority right now and music isn't. And but that changes at times. And so it's just like there's not enough hours in the day to do everything any of us want to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is finding the time when your brain works best to write. And this was something I really, really struggled with for a very long time. And I think I've always been a night owl. So for a long time, my prime writing time was between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. And that was great. And then I got a job, and that was not so great anymore.
It doesn't work
and
anymore.
So I had to fix that. But then I tried everything. I tried getting up at 6 in the morning, which I don't even know why I tried that. That was such a bad idea. Did not work at all. And so, I've tried everything, but I have found that my best writing times are in the morning-ish, meaning like from 10 to noon, and then at night after 7 p.m. And so I try not to force myself to write any other times because it's hard. It doesn't work as well, and I'm not as productive. And so finding those times, and they have changed for me. I used to be able to write so well at 2 a.m. I'm like, I have to be in bed by then. I can't do this anymore. And so it does change, but you kind of figure it out and you figure out where your best time is.
Right.
But don't abuse yourself like I did and try to figure out what it is within, a 2-week period. That was a bad idea. So yeah, I guess that's how to find time to write. And then for me, I work really well if I have someone bending over me telling me, hurry, hurry, hurry. So I make my own deadline. And I usually give myself a couple of, like an hour here or 20 minutes there. And I'm much more productive if I don't know that I have all day to do it, because then I will get very distracted. And so, I guess that would be answers to that question. Yeah. What was the second part of the question? I forgot.
The second part is encouragement for when you just, you hit that point in your story where it's just like, this isn't working. I really should just start over, or I just want to quit completely. What do you do then?
Well, for me, it often seems like a spiritual attack when I get to that point. And so if I really feel like I can't do it, that's when I know that it's more a spiritual attack, because I'm not that type of person to say I can't do something. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. So when my brain goes to I can't, something's wrong. And so I try to spend, when that happens, I don't always force myself to go through, because it kind of, I call it like mental scarring. So your brain associates writing with bad, and that's never how I want it to be for me. I never want to force myself to do something that I love. And so that's kind of a bad way to do it. So when I get to and it does happen, when I get to the I can'ts, then I just step away from it and I spend a lot of time praying or reading the Bible or working on verses. And I mean, it can last a couple of hours. It can last a couple of weeks sometimes. But I trying to at least identifying it as a spiritual attack is very helpful. And it's kind of interesting. Something like that happened, and it was really bad with Left to Die. And my mom was one of the people who really helped me with that. And she said, I can't remember, I don't think it was any particular part, but that story is, I mean, it's very much a part of my heart. And so with doing all of that, I mean, there's a lot of spiritual warfare that goes on in China, and it's tragic. And so I think just because I was writing about it, that was a hard book to write.
I bet. Yeah.
And so my mom I remember I went downstairs and it's like, Mom, I don't think I can do this. This story is so sad. I mean, I had all these excuses for why it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And she was like, I think you need to do this. And I was like, I don't really want to anymore. I don't even like it. And she was the one who said, she said, you were so excited about this story and you felt like, it was the Lord leading you to it. And she said, and I agree with you. And she said, this is a total change that it shouldn't be happening. And she was like, if you're doing what God wants you to do, and if you're praying about your story, like I know you do, then this should not be happening. And so she prayed with me that time. And, I mean, for some people it seems weird, but I guess just with, a lot of the health struggles I've been through, I have kind of a different relationship with the Lord than some people do. And I'm not above anybody, and I'm not saying that. But sometimes it feels like I'm pretty in tune with, not with God, but just spiritual things sometimes. And so it's not always easy to recognize though. So with writing, it's kind of a toss up between keep going, get past it, or just stop and wait and pray. And so it actually happened with the book I'm working on now a couple weeks ago, because this story is about a very broken person who comes to Christ. And it was during one of the parts where they were talking about the Lord, and I just hit that wall. I was like, I can't do this. I don't even like it anymore. Why am I doing this? But then I kind of recognized at that time, I was like, wow, this is a story that is going to impact a lot of people. And I need to get through this. And so I wasn't completely at the sobbing point that I was with Left to Die, but it was definitely, wow, I really need to keep pushing through this. And I did. And that, because I mean, part of it was I didn't have much more to go in that scene. And so it wasn't too bad. I was just exhausted. I was like, okay, I need to go take a rest. And, it seems so silly that writing can make you that tired, but it can. And so after that, I prayed a lot and just made sure that my heart was in the right place as I'm writing this story, and making sure that I'm still listening to God instead of listening to myself and saying, oh, I have to get this book done by this time. It's making sure, is this really what God wants me to be doing? And so there's that aspect of it. And then also for encouragement, it's imperative to have a community of people behind you. And for me, that's definitely my parents. And I have a lot of online friends, which I don't know why people think that's so weird. Maybe it's just our generation.
I know it's so normal for us, I guess. I don't know.
And so I actually got to meet one of my best internet friends, Abigail Clare. She's from the Left-Handed Typist, and she is just incredible. She's become one of the most amazing encouragement I've ever had as a writing partner. And so we work together a lot. But she has also been just so encouraging throughout this story that I'm working on now, because it is a hard story to write. There's a lot of tragedy and heartbreak, and I'm like, Abby, I don't want to do it. Nobody's gonna like this, but she's the one who's reading it and saying, no, keep going, this is good. And so it's not just her, but everybody else. And it is good to talk about your work in progresses. I don't all the time because, first of all, it's so hard to scale down this massive work in progress into a couple little sentences.
Right.
That's my battle. But for people who can share about their work in progresses, because then you have people encouraging you. Okay, yes, you can do this. You can get it done. And it's amazing. And especially if you can have a critique partner like I have in Abby, that is just, it's the best. Because for us, now not everybody has to do this, but I knew for this story I was going to need a lot of pushing and people telling me to keep going with it to get it finished. And so that's been my biggest strategy. And I haven't ever done this before, but I send Abby the chapters as I write them. And so she's getting the rough draft of everything. And so she will give me plot feedback. She'll give me, the little grammar errors that are in there. So it's not like a comprehensive edit or anything, but she's loving my characters. She's telling me, no, that's not a good idea. You need to take that out. Or, it'd be really cool if you put this there. And so it's just helping. So it doesn't feel like I'm doing it by myself. And that has been incredible for this story. So it was hard to send my first draft because I have never done that before. Drafts are so messy. So that was just a fight for me. But that has been the most amazing encouragement ever, is to send it to Abby and have her give me feedback right away. And that, I highly recommend that. But it's also hard to find good critique partners. So that's where the whole connections thing comes in. You have to connect with people. So and there you go. Another long-winded answer.
No, it was so good though. It was so good. And you don't want to just send it to just anybody. Like,
right.
I know
well, and that's very important. Yeah, because I've actually had, I don't want to say like I've been abused by some critiquers, but I guess if you look at it in one way, I've had multiple people just be unnecessarily unkind and rude. And I know that happens to other people, and it just breaks my heart because it's not necessary. It's your story, and no one else should tell you what they think about it. They have their opinion and they're entitled to it, but they don't have to tell you what their opinion is. And so it's just kind of this thing. But it is important to have somebody you fully trust and is not going to trample on your story, read it for you.
That kind of defeats the entire purpose, especially if you're doing something where you're like sending them chapter by chapter, and if they give you this huge discouragement right in the middle, you're going to be like, well, this is awful, and quit. But if you have someone who can pull out the good and say what they are enjoying or what's maybe a little confusing to them, maybe something to work on, like, that's incredible. So that's very, very cool. All right. Well, your answers have been completely awesome. I hope you guys are enjoying this because Ivy has like so much wisdom to share. So okay, let's see.
Or just a lot of words to say.
But it's all good though. Let's see what you guys are saying. Okay. Someone asked, when you give someone the draft, she could copy and paste it and present it as theirs, right? How do you reduce risks like that? Well, I think that goes back to really trusting and knowing who you're giving your book to. You do not just want to send it to anybody. I think kind of the point of having a critique partner is to be someone that you already know and have a friendship with, and someone who kind of has like similar goals as you and is like-minded. I think makes a huge difference. And if they're truly your friends, they're not going to just rip off your book. So yeah, but that's a great question. You definitely want to be careful about that. And not just, send it around to everybody. So
and especially with Abby, we knew each other for 2 years. And we would work on, so we started out just beta reading for each other, which is like one of the final stages before publishing. And then we started getting to know each other a little better, and we really clicked. And then I can't remember, I guess it was earlier this year. So, I mean, I already really knew her and trusted her. And, but that's a huge thing, is you don't want to send it to just anybody. Really need well and trust very much. So good question.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, unless you guys have any other questions. Oh, well, Michaela says, how do you pick a good critique partner? So I think that's kind of, it's hard because I don't think you really pick them. I think it just sort of happens. Like, I think that
Yeah.
you just have to pray and ask the Lord to bring someone into your life, to that you can connect with, because oftentimes it's hard to, because everyone is working on their own projects and there's only so much time in a day. And as much as everyone would love to beta read for each other and help each other with all these projects, everyone's busy and life is happening. So I would really just suggest praying and asking the Lord to connect you with the right person, because it is hard to find someone like that, I think. But the Lord can definitely direct your paths and connect you with that person, as long as you're just, being out there and being social and connecting the best in your ability that you know how, and then just let the Lord take it from there. But that's my advice. Anything you'd say to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've actually had 3 critique partners over the years, and that's something that I didn't expect. I thought, well, once you have a critique partner, they'll stick with you forever. But the thing is, when you start writing when you're so young, your goals change. And so that kind of means your critique partners change, because maybe they go in a different direction, or they don't want to write so much anymore, and that's totally fine. So Abby is my 3rd critique partner, and I'm not expecting us to work together forever. I mean, that would be amazing if that happens, but it's not like if we start, if not our friendship, but just what we're able to do just kind of starts slowly not dying away sounds bad, but that's the only thing I can think of right now.
But it's just life happening, and
it's not a big deal, because before we were critique partners, we were really good friends. And so I think it's just like any other relationship in life. You want to get to know somebody before you share your heart with them.
Yeah.
And I think over the internet that takes a little longer than it would in person. And so it's, choosing critique partners. I didn't choose Abby. I think I started by following her blog, and I just emailed her one day. I was like, hey, we have a lot of similar interests. So I think I said, would you be interested in just emailing every now and again? And that it just grew from there. So it hasn't happened on purpose for me any of the times that I have had a critique partner. It's just something that, I've been tremendously blessed that I even have critique partners, and that's such an amazing blessing and something I never anticipated. So it's pretty cool.
That is very, very awesome.
So there's no good answer for that question is basically what I'm saying. But
so we can't help you, no. So that was a really good question, though. Definitely. Yes. Well, thank you to everyone who asked questions. Thank you guys for joining in today. And for those of you who didn't already know Ivy, I know some of you know her from Goodreads, but for those of you who this was like your first experience being introduced to her, definitely go check out her website, her blog, and her books and everything, because I'm excited to see where she's going. Like, I feel like she's one of these authors who, like, just keep your eye out on her, because I feel like it's going to be really fun to see what the Lord does in and through her. And I'm just super excited that we were able to have this chat today, and that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to spend with us. So thank you, Ivy, so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. This was a lot of fun.
Okay, so once again, if you just want to let people know what your website is or how they can find you.
Yeah, so my website and blog is lakesidepublications.com. And then I'm on most social medias. I try to avoid them as much as possible, but because they are time sappers. But Instagram is definitely my most active social media, and I am author Ivy Rose there on Twitter and Pinterest, and YouTube occasionally. So love to see you around.
Yes. Well, again, thank you guys so much for joining in today. If you joined in late, I know some of you are just joining in right now. You can rewatch the video. It's going to be posted here on my YouTube. So please feel free to watch it from the beginning if you want to get to know Ivy better. And we're also going to be having another authors live chat this Thursday. I think it's going to be at 7 o'clock Eastern in the evening. And we're going to have a surprise guest for that. So for those of you who are interested in seeing more chats like this, feel free to subscribe or just follow on social media. And we'll be doing more fun author stuff in the future. So once again, thank you guys so much, and we look forward to talking to y'all